It's my pleasure to have with us today Dr. Dennis Worthen. In this series I'm calling Reflections from Pharmacy Leaders Advancing the Profession. Dr. Worthen is a leader in the history of pharmacy. Unusual background in that he has a PhD in Library and Information Sciences and spent many years in a career as a pharmaceutical sales rep, and for many years with Procter & Gamble. Has written numerous pharmacy history books, including The Heroes of Pharmacy and Clinical Pharmacy in the United States, Transformation of a Profession, co-authored with Ellen Bob. He was recognized by APHA as an honorary president, and he's received a number of national leadership awards, including the Phi Lambda Sigma one, and recognized by APHA ASP with the Linwood Ties Friends of ASP. So welcome, Dr. Worthen.
Thank you.
All right. So we'll begin. We'd like to have you, we'd like to learn more about your journey in your position as being a pharmacy historian and really recognized as a major contributor in that area. And when you reflect, you may want to include key events that influence you or people that may have influenced you in your journey.
Well, my journey was anything but straightforward, as you mentioned. When I went back to graduate school, my interest was in trying to better understand prescribing influences. And while I was at Case Western Reserve in Cleveland, one of the people that I met and became a very strong influence was a man by the name of Jack Millis. And of course, Jack Millis, to educators, was responsible for the Millis Study Commission in 1976. So Jack and I had a number of interfaces, both while I was a student and later. And much later, when I was getting ready to look for different adventures than being a pharmacy representative for Procter, Jack came back to mind. So he is probably one of the most significant factors in why I got where I am. When I was getting ready to retire, I wanted to do something else. I was too young to hang up my boots, and we never used the word retire, we used refocus. And something that became very obvious was that pharmacy does not, or did not, and still does not celebrate its own heroes. Medicine does, engineering does, almost every profession does, but pharmacy didn't. And so I started asking pharmacy leaders who their heroes were and why. And what would happen is, if I would ask for 10, the typical thing was, well, let's see. There's Procter and there's Remington, and well, gee, that's about all I can think of. Mm-hmm. Well, what did they do to become heroes? Well, you know, I really don't know. They've got an award named after them, so they must have been big guys. The thing that I wanted to do was to tell the stories of the people and the profession for pharmacy. I didn't particularly want to write history for historians. The minutiae, the 30,000, 50,000 foot approach to history was not something that really appealed to me. It's appropriate, it's a good way of looking at things, but it wasn't where I wanted to be. So one of the first things I started to do was try to figure out who the histories of the profession were. And that led to a number of projects. The Heroes Project, certainly. The retrospective look at the Millis Study Commission came out of that. And the focus on pharmacists and pharmacy in World War II likewise came out of that, because so many of the heroes were about that period of time. So that's how I ended up where I got.
Wow, thank you very much. So my next question has to do with legacy in 20 years. And I rephrase that question in that reflecting on what are you most proud of in terms of your contributions to really help advance the profession of pharmacy?
Oh, wow. Well, the fact that the stories have been told and are available to me is very important. Um, Hopefully, as the future goes on, the profession will become more engaged in what was important in the past. There's nothing new. I mean, we've got a virus now. It's really no different than the epidemic of tuberculosis earlier in the 19th century, or the flu epidemic in 1916, 1918. So, I mean, all we do is keep repeating the same thing over and over again, and hopefully we learn from it. Certainly that's a legacy, I hope. The other legacy is not history related, but almost 20 years ago, my wife and I established the award for the past president of ASP. And the reason that we did was these young leaders were disappearing. They would come through school, they would have a national office, and they'd disappear and you'd never hear from them. And so we decided that we'd get active with that pharmacy leadership group, the young past presidents of ASP. And we established the award, and as of the virtual meeting, the 18th president-elect that is part of that group was named or was elected. They call themselves the Worthen family. We talk to them. We try to stay in touch with them. And a couple of weeks ago, we had 11 of them on a Zoom conference.
Wow.
So it's people like Alex Barkey and Lucy West and the Beauty area. These are the young leaders that were part of that process, and it's ongoing. So hopefully that's one of our legacies.
Thank you very much. Very good. So any words of advice for students in their journey as they develop as leaders to help advance the profession?
Well, there's a big move today to incorporate leadership into the core part of pharmacy education, which is a wonderful thing to do. There are opportunities there for every student. Where I perhaps depart a little bit from what's going on is so many of the leadership programs focus on things like management. They focus on personnel, HR, accounting, and under the rubric of leadership. It's almost like what happened back in the 60s, 70s with the advent of clinical pharmacy. If you look at the curriculum of the day, the curriculum really didn't change. They just took all the courses and put clinical in front of whatever else was going on. And that was very early on in part of that early history. The way that we learned, my generation learned leadership, was not out of a textbook. We learned it by watching role models. And my advice to anybody is find the role models that have skill sets, that do things that you want to do, and learn how that individual did it. It's the best example that I have of why a role model and why it's important to leadership.
Excellent. That ties in very beautifully with what the purpose of this course is. So my final question has to do with when we study the decade of the 2020s, one of the key events in this decade will be the COVID-19 pandemic. And as other events in our history has shaped our profession, how do you see the COVID-19 pandemic shaping our history, in particular as creating an opportunity for our profession?
Well, I think that the profession of pharmacy and pharmacists post 2020 are not going to look a whole lot like they did in 2019. There's a whole raft of changes that they'd started before, but will be ramped up for this. We're in our ninth week of stay in place. No matter whether you're on the front lines or like we are, we're getting an awful lot of things mail order and delivered. That means that we no longer have to go to a physical bricks and mortar pharmacy. And that's going to have an impact. How are the pharmacies of tomorrow going to operate in a completely different environment? I don't know. I can guess. We've gotten used to having things come to our front door. Amazon's done a wonderful job. In fact, the worst thing about the pandemic, according to some people, I won't say us, but according to some people, has been the disappearance of 2-day Amazon delivery. It's now 8 days or 10 days or 6 weeks. But it's not just this young generation that wants instant gratification. I think it's all of us. If we want something or if we need something, we need it now and we don't want to wait. So that's going to have an impact on brick and mortar. What's the impact on the individual professional going to be? I think this is the time that we will find out whether pharmacy is in the distribution business or if it's in the service business. And it'll be a fun thing to watch.
Absolutely. Very good. I really appreciate those remarks. This will be very meaningful to our students. Again, thank you for taking some time to be part of this.
You're welcome.